This is Meg Riley, and you've joined us for another episode of The VUU. Today we'll be joined, hopefully, barring technical difficulties, by Cathy Rion Starr, who is the co-minister of the UU congregation in Hartford, Connecticut, and is the co-founder of SURJ Hartford, and also working with SURJ nationally. We're also joined by Erin Heaney. She is the national organizing director at SURJ, and the leadership of team members of SURJ Buffalo. By now, I've used the term SURJ like 17 times. You might wonder what I'm talking about. SURJ is Showing Up for Racial Justice. It's a national network of white folks organizing white communities for racial justice. So we'll get to those guests in just a minute, but meanwhile, Hank, what's up with the hot stove report? You've been busy.
Well, hi, I'm fine, Meg. How are you?
It is beautiful here. My rhubarb's growing 6 inches a day. Life is good.
Yeah, hey, folks. Hank Purser. I am sitting here in my office in Milton. I've got like a checklist a mile long of things I need to get done because starting this coming Sunday, the candidate for ministry here in Milton, Lisa Ward, will be here, and I'm at this very moment. You'll see my hands moving perhaps during the service because I'm. During the show, because I'm, if you're watching on YouTube, you might hear paper rustling because I'm stuffing the warrant for the congregational meeting into letters that have to go out. There was a little discussion beforehand about the term a warrant, which I didn't know that people outside of New England didn't use the term a warrant.
I only hear it with a warrant for arrest. I know. I guess the word warrant and arrest.
That's just you, Meg.
Well, that is true. That is very true.
It's just I don't know. It's a legal term that I've always used, that we've always known. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing. But anyway, back to the big picture. I mean, we're very excited here in Milton that they have such a wonderful candidate. The other thing I have to say that I have to do before I leave is clean the office so that when Lisa comes, that the office isn't filled with my receipts for
Mousquetaire hat behind you.
Right. That can stay, but the desk is just a mess, and so it's that sort of stuff that I need to clean up. But the big picture, people are congregations are inviting ministers to be their candidates. It's dropped off a little bit. Last week was really the big hot week. Of people naming, and lots of folks going to many of the large churches. Last week we spoke about the number of women being called to large congregations, which is something that we had.
Well, wait a minute. Who and where?
Well, Jennifer Nordstrom has been invited to be the candidate in Milwaukee. Robin Tanner has been invited to be the candidate in Summit, New Jersey. Abby Tennis has been invited to be the candidate at the First U in Philadelphia.
Okay, now that's not a large. So when you say large, you mean prestigious or?
But you know what? I mean, all that sort of stuff. I mean, because it really hadn't been. I mean, there were always a few. Congregations that had women that were large or prestigious, all those sort of things. So really being able to this year really has just been overwhelming, and it's great. It really is great. We still have and as we also talked about last week, there's still a long way to go about getting ministers of color into congregations.
Has one been placed yet? Has even one been placed yet? I've been following and haven't seen any minister of color be placed yet.
I don't.
Or settled.
Well, it's still a candidate season. I'm trying to think, and I really off the top of my head, I'm going to say no. And that's also I don't know everyone. I don't know everyone's backgrounds, but knowing that I would that I can easily say, oh yes, but it is certainly an issue, and as I said last week, one of the a sticking point for a lot of folks is that ministers of color are often invited to be pre-candidates. They get invited to do lots of pre-candidates, but very rarely are they called to these congregations, and so that is. I think that's certainly frustrating for them, and should be frustrating for all of us. It's there's a lot to be said about ways of thinking about how to address this, perhaps even more than just workshops and those sort of things. But not to take away the celebrations that are going on in congregations, and of course one of the other things that's going on is that there are a number of congregations who don't have candidates, who are able to who have entered a very large number of churches have gone into sort of the second round of searching for a minister. There's this, a much longer first round. In the second round, the congregations sort of open up and sort of say, hey, please send us more names. Please apply. And so this year it was, I think originally like 16. I think now it's actually 11. I think a couple of congregations were able to find folks to be there. They were able to settle and settle on a candidate between then and now. But it's it's exciting, and it's great.
Exciting. Lots of movement, lots of younger ministers getting placed.
Certainly, that's the other thing I was going to say too.
Cool.
I mean, I think that's one of what's happening right now is that a lot of folks who are serving congregations are announcing now rather than sort of right away. Because if you're not serving a congregation, it's a lot easier for you to sort of say, hey, look, I'm leaving. I'm not serving a congregation that I have to speak to about leaving, and I'm just going to, and I'm doing this, which is great. So, but there are certainly a lot of folks who have never served in parish ministry positions before, which is also exciting, and I think it will also help. It's a great wave, and it really also helped the movement as a whole, sort of move into a whole new era of what is church now in the 21st century. So I think that's great.
Speaking of moving into a new era of what church is, I wanted to ask Cathy. You were at the Trust retreat last week, and that was revolutionary and new. And we're going to have guests, and hopefully on May 5th do a whole show about trans and gender nonconforming folks. But I'd love to hear just some. Seems like that created a lot of joy and excitement for the people.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Trust is it's transgender religious UU professionals. I forget the rest of the acronym, but we were, and the P is silent. Trust. So we were 15 genderqueer and trans religious professionals, mostly ministers, couple of DREs and other folks. And yeah, oh my gosh, it was really amazing to spend 3 days together. It's a gathering that's been in the works for 20 years or so. And I loved learning about some of the history of, those of us who know Barb Grieve and Sean Dennison, they often get called the first, but they're not the first. Erin, whose name I don't remember, began serving in the early 80s, and there's a couple other folks we know of kind of in that era, and of course there were folks before that who we don't know because we've lost some of that history. So yeah, lots of really rich community building and story sharing and experiences, and we've got a lot of work to do as a denomination, and we've come a long ways. It's that both.
That is so exciting, and I was excited to see that with the 15 people there were 15 others for whom it didn't work. Mm-hmm. So just the idea of the critical mass and the gender diversity, and it was really exciting to see the pictures. Really exciting. Well, as I said, we will focus on that, but today I really wanted to jump in because our guests are going to have to leave early, and there's so much to talk about with this group showing up for racial justice, which Erin is the sole national organizing director with 260 chapters of this. So I've had the privilege of meeting and working with Erin a little bit myself. I'm working with the Minneapolis chapter. But Erin, what is it like juggling all of those needs and variety of groups? And thank you for doing that work.
Yeah, it's so good to be with all of you. Yeah, I mean, SURJ is a national network, which means there's lots of different organizing models, there's lots of different styles, there's lots of needs. You know, the country is a very diverse place, even amongst white folks. There's lots of different kinds of white people, and so our organizing, you know, we're in this moment where we've grown tremendously, and we're trying to figure out, you know, how do we best support organizing on the ground in the different ways that it looks like. So, yeah, my day always looks very different. And it's been exciting to learn from the different organizing styles across the country.
Speaking of your days being different, I watched video footage of you being hauled out in handcuffs from the Trump rally in Buffalo the other night. Was that a first for you? And how did you, I know you're with a whole SURJ group there, including our own Bob LaVallee, who's engaged with that, but can you describe that event?
Yeah, what we did in Buffalo was similar to Trump disruptions that have been happening all across the country, both within the SURJ network and also, you know, powerful people of color-led movements as well. And so, yeah, I got to jump in on that moment with a crew of about 45 of us in Buffalo. There was a whole team of people that were doing everything from risking arrest to providing support to capturing video. So, and we had a multiracial team, and the SURJ folks were asked to go inside and to disrupt in the Trump rally, go get our people. So we went in and we disrupted Trump for as long as we could. And so there was about, I think in the end, we're doing our debrief tonight, I think there were about 20 of us that went in, linked arms, started chanting, and then decided to sit down when they came to haul us out. And many of us went limp to try to disrupt for as long as possible. And then a couple folks were arrested. And then we had a crew, our comrades of color outside. We're having a resiliency party to celebrate their resiliency in the face of not just one day of horrible racism when Trump came to town, but, you know, an entire history that has, yeah, hurt and harmed and murdered them. So, and then they had some really powerful confrontations. The police actually were extremely violent with them, much more violent with them, not surprisingly, than they were with us, even though we were trespassing. So yeah, it was a first for me, my first arrest. And
Erin, can you speak to how SURJ started and who and what was the birthplace, the seed?
Yeah, so SURJ was founded in another presidential year, right after the election of Barack Obama, and as the healthcare debate really heated up in ways that were extremely racialized. Race was being used to divide folks in ways that would defeat, you know, getting healthcare for all. And so there were attacks on the president, which it was really never about the president, but it was about what it meant to have a black president in this country. And there was a spike in hate crimes. The backlash to having a black president was very real. There was a spike in hate crimes. And so there are a number of leaders of color in the South who put out the call and said, white people, it cannot just be us standing up, speaking out, pushing back. We need you all in this. It cannot just be us.
When you say the South, wasn't Highlander Center central in that aspect?
Yeah. Pam McMichael, who's the director of the Highlander Center, is who convened the first kind of epic call of white folks who began what would become the SURJ network. And so SURJ was pretty low to the ground for a couple of years. There were about 12 chapters across the country that were organizing, supporting each other. They did some work on SB 1070 in Arizona, the Show Me Your Papers law, and has grown tremendously in the last, you know, since the Ferguson uprising. SURJ went from having 12 chapters to, Meg said 260. Some days it feels like that. We're at about 140, 150, and we're still getting about 5 new chapter requests a week. And so, yeah. And
I would say that of the group that founded it, Chris Crass was one of the folks who's a Unitarian Universalist who goes around speaking quite a bit specifically to white people about doing this kind of work. So, yeah, it's great.
If I could jump in too, I think one of the things that makes SURJ so powerful is that they're very explicit about their values. It's a values-based organization. So things like calling people in rather than calling them out, or having accountability, or, I mean, I could go through the whole list, but having those explicit values that we constantly go back and refer to has given us a great, there's a lot of stability because we don't have to have the arguments about what's important. So.
Exactly.
Aisha, you wrote something. Why don't you say it?
Yeah, I was thinking that.
You can talk more, Aisha.
I hadn't realized that SURJ started as soon as '08, and it's hopeful to see that it's a counter to the white supremacist groups and the militia groups that have also exploded after Obama was elected. So it's the counter. It is interesting that it took Ferguson to really, and it's yay, thank heavens, right? That something is sparking folks to wake up. So that's good.
Totally. And someone said to me the other day, like, wow, it's really important to recognize that, like, someone was like, well, why are there so many white people coming out of the woodwork now? And it's like, it's because of Black leadership and the movement for Black lives, right? Like, and so it's important that as we do our work, like, we got to stay grounded in the fact that, like, it's that movement that is waking us up as white folks. And so just stay super, super grounded in that.
Do you want to talk about the accountability, the value of accountability, and what that means for SURJ?
Yeah, so SURJ, we organize white folks, but we don't just run off as the white people and start organizing things. That's scary when white people start doing that in ways that are not accountable or connected to other movement work. And so, we do accountability through collective action. And so that looks like a couple different things. Our chapters have local accountability relationships. And so this isn't us, kind of waiting next to the phone for someone to call us and ask us to do something. People of color are busy organizing in their own communities, and most places they don't have time to tell us what to do, right? They've got their own organizing to do. And so for us it means taking initiative to go come up with ideas for how we might organize in our own communities, and then check in with folks of color. This is what we're planning. What do you think? Give us feedback, incorporating feedback. So we're not asking the people of color to do our work for us, but we are checking in and wanting to be doing the work in ways that are accountable and useful to the movement work that they are leading.
Can you talk about the Trump rally and how you did that and what that looked like, so that some of our folks who really want to understand this can hear a case study?
Yeah, Bob, do you want to talk a little bit about that? You were part of the crew.
Yeah. Well, there were two criteria for me to do this kind of action. One was that we had to have a commitment to nonviolence, and we had to be really well organized. And both things were totally in place. So our little Buffalo chapter has been working together for since last summer, which feels like a long time in a very short amount of time. But when we had I remember sitting around Erin's table actually, and when we knew that Trump was coming, and and we had a moment. This is the core leadership team saying, are we in or are we out to do a disruption? And to every single person, we were all in. And then we took it seriously. So we brought in an outside trainer to give everyone our expanded group nonviolent resistance training. We organized into individual groups. Roles were very carefully delineated and practiced. So when if you watch the video, it looks chaotic as heck when things start, when we start chanting and it's down and the cops come. But a lot of people who participated have reported a deep sense of calm once the action began, because they knew they were supported, they knew they were doing the right thing in the right way. And I mean, what was really hard actually was the hour and a half of waiting on the floor of the Trump campaign, of the rally, pretending to be Trump supporters. Although Erin really embraced that role, I gotta say. I wore a Marine Corps sweatshirt, so I totally passed. And that waiting was the really hard part. The rest of it, once we got into it, it was all on ball bearings.
My favorite, this is a hysterical story. At one point, most of the people that got arrested were women, and we were all kind of lined up, and we'd been waiting. At one point, this guy turns back to me and goes, God, they say that young women don't like Donald Trump. It is just so great to see so many young women at this. And I was like, oh boy, buddy, you're gonna.
I know. After the cops started dragging us out, the people we've been talking to for an hour and a half were like, I was just talking to them. They seem so nice.
Well, so one of the purposes of the action was really not to move people inside the stadium. I mean, for that we do need a much longer term strategy, right, around organizing in communities that are hurting. But the moment we're in right now, is one where we've got to take more direct action. And so really our purpose was to talk to people who are watching on TV, to force particularly white people to confront that tension and have to pick a side. And I say from my own experience, it's been incredible. The act of getting arrested or doing civil disobedience has already started so many conversations with people, white people that I've never had a conversation with about race before. And so just to Aisha's point earlier about like we're the counter, we're the counter to the white supremacist groups, like, oftentimes as white people we can stay in our own little bubble and say like we're the good white people, we get it, as opposed to thinking of our jobs as to recruit more white people into the movement for racial justice and to be building collective power. And so that was really, we see the action as part of that work, which is about actually recruiting more white people in, even if they don't have the perfect language quite yet or their analysis isn't quite there yet. It's about meeting where they're at and bringing them with us, because if we don't, the white supremacist groups, we know they have no problem recruiting white people. So yeah, we're in a battle for the hearts and minds of white folks in this country.
So I'm curious how the accountability part of that action worked. So you had talked to the leadership of the groups of color, and they were going to be outside in the resiliency building action. And then I wondered, when you were saying that the police, as always, I mean, we just had a lot of white people here arrested, and the police couldn't have been more gentle, and so what do you do when you see that in that very action the people of color are being treated really differently, and how do you keep that relationship of accountability going, once the thing starts?
Yeah. I wasn't, Bob, were you outside when it happened?
I missed the first part of it. When people were sitting on the tracks and they cleared them, the cops cleared them very violently. Just rows and rows of cops with 3-foot batons, dogs. One of our leaders from our accountability group was talking about it. A pretty strong woman, and when she recounted it, she started to cry because it was so intense for her. And I have to say, like, I haven't been so scared since I was in Afghanistan. That's how intense it was. And then they pushed folks sort of off the perimeter into the sidewalk area. It was under an underpass. It's kind of hard to describe, but it was dark. There were lights. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah, I'd say, so we went into it, Meg, with a small planning crew that was multiracial. There were white folks and people of color, and every time we did planning and every time we did a training, there was caucusing. So there was a core team that was communicating, that were kind of holding space for the other folks. So part of it was caucusing. Part of it was a shared understanding that we knew from the very beginning we were going to be treated very differently. And we all knew that. And that was part of the strategy. We knew that the press would come to us, not to them. And so when we were asked to do press, we always brought one of our comrades from that crew with us. We didn't do interviews without them. And we tried intentionally to, every time they talked about us being arrested, to talk about police violence, right? We used it as a way to pivot. So it wasn't perfect. We're going to do a big, huge debrief tonight. I'm sure there's going to be lots of learnings. So happy to.
That's really helpful to hear about the process and the group and the caucusing. And I think those really concrete skills we all need to be building those right now. So, Cathy, were you trying to say something a minute ago?
Yeah, I don't know if some of you have probably had the meme come across your Facebook feed this week about there was a poll in the 60s when the sit-ins were happening, and there were two stats. It was about 60% of people disagreed with that as a tactic, and about 60% of people thought that it was hurting the cause. And now, 60 years later, that's the stories that we tell on Martin Luther King Day. And it's the story we tell with pride about the civil rights movement. And so when I watch the video of Erin and Bob and folks, and I'm like, oh, I don't enjoy doing direct action personally. I do it because I know we need to, but it's hard, and I do sometimes question, is this worth it? And it's looking back at that history that we're reminded that yes, it's direct action and civil disobedience are absolutely critical tactics, even if they don't feel good at the time. It's the action is in the reaction, and we get a reaction, and we can move power with direct action, and that's why we do it.
We've never gotten anything any other way, let's be real.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
The actual changes that this movement for Black Lives is making are astonishing. So when people get into that kind of rap about it's not effective, I'm like, look around, pay attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So other folks
You know,
I've been
not to
talking to this
mention,
conversation, yeah.
I don't know if you look at the video, a lot of the people who participated in the direct action were young women, and I guarantee the 21 people who were inside the rally, they're going to be on fire for the rest of their lives for this work.
So, Erin, one thing that you've said to me in other conversations is that Unitarian Universalists are involved in, I thought 260, you said 140, pretty much across the country in these chapters. Obviously, Cathy's taken a whole lot of leadership in starting the local chapter where she is. What are some other how do you see Unitarian Universalists coming into this?
Yeah, everywhere I get to travel to, I see UUs. It's awesome. I show up at a SURJ chapter, and it's full of UUs. The UU folks in Cleveland have been really incredible. I've been working with the chapter there, and some of our chapter leadership are members of the congregation there. We've used their space for canvas trainings to go canvassing in white neighborhoods. They provided space after actions. So yeah, it's been pretty powerful there. I know, and then yeah, folks from the UU Church who clearly have gone through programming that you all have provided are stepping into leadership in SURJ across the country. And so it's clear that whatever you guys are doing in terms of waking folks up and sparking, you know, thoughtfulness with folks, people are then, you know, finding SURJ as a home to then move into action, is one place to move into action. And so, yeah.
I just wanted to have you say that as a non-UU. I think we who are inside can get frustrated by wishing it were more, but it's really exciting to hear that that's true. What are what are a couple of the coolest things going on right now that you're the most excited about?
At SURJ, I'm continue to be really excited about the disruptions. I think for a lot of our folks, for a lot of white folks, this is the first time we put our bodies on the line, and it's really exciting, and I think it hopefully has implications for longer term work. Which is really exciting. We're having a National Canvas Day, which the date has changed, actually, Cathy, since I've last seen you. We're going to push it back. So at some point next month, we're going to do a National Canvas Day to go out into white neighborhoods and talk to folks about racial justice. Some of our chapters have done it, but it's part of our ongoing base building work, that long-term work of bringing more white folks, either, you know, bringing in folks who maybe are with us but aren't engaged in action yet, and maybe going out and talking to some people who are conflicted about racial justice and having the conversations with them.
So it's no longer April 30th, Erin?
Well, I still think we should do it in Buffalo, Bob, but we got a lot of white people that need something to do. But we're going to push it back a bit just because because Donald Trump came to Buffalo and I'm a little behind.
And you can learn from doing it and know more when you help others, yeah.
Yeah.
So that canvassing, will that be of the... Are you attempting to do the kind of deep canvassing that I joined Erin and some other SURJ activists in Los Angeles, and we practiced a very lengthy kind of conversation with people that really gets deep into values and personal experience that's, oh, Cathy's gone again, that's actually amazingly effective. Is that what you're thinking this Canvas Day will be?
We're going to try a little bit of both. So some chapters, as I said, SURJ is like a huge network and people have different needs in different places. So in some places, people are really wanting to base build and move people that are already with us into an action or into a campaign. So some places it'll be just recruiting people and asking them to take an action. And in other places, we are going to begin to experiment a little bit with talking to people on the doors who may be Trump supporters. And, you know, can we move them? So to be continued. I'm going to have to hop off, but Meg, maybe you could talk a little bit more about Deep Canvas.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I'll get to that. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us.
So great to be
Thank
with you.
Good luck with everything.
See you later. Good night, Bob.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. So our other guest has, as we hit the halfway mark, our other guest has been bounced for no reason. I think.
But, you know, I think it's such a one of the things that you said there, Meg, about the importance of direct action. I mean, Cathy spoke about it, and you know, I mean, because there was a part of me that sort of felt like, oh, well, those people whom everyone was speaking to there at the Trump rally, who all of a sudden were like, well, you know, all these young women, or you know, this nice person we were speaking to who was a Marine, and they were against it, like, you know, there's a part of me that's sort of worried, like, oh, are we turning people off by this direct action? And I think it's a good reminder it's that what really got people's attention, got people's to notice and to really make the change. Is folks really sort of being out there and putting their bodies in in places that where they're not comfortable, and perhaps even dangerous.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Aisha.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I'm really a believer too in the multi-prong approach. That like this direct action we did was really great, and I think it'll galvanize our base. I know we persuaded actually absolutely nobody inside the rally. That's cool. That's fine. But we also do a lot of highly relational.
It's not really that fine, Bob, but okay.
You're right. I'm sorry. We just didn't expect it to make. We didn't expect that. That wasn't the point. Was converting anybody inside. It was the affirmation to our larger community that was important to us. But we also do a lot of work that's highly relational too. So, for example, one thing we do in Buffalo, we've done a couple times, is we will on a Saturday morning we'll spread out and across the coffee shops of Buffalo and take a table, sit down, and set up a little placard saying, "Would you like to have a conversation about race in Buffalo?" Which, of course, like most people look at it and look away and walk right by, and we just sit there and smile. And sometimes we'll actually invite people, and we get people to sit down and talk. And we're not just playing to the base. Buffalo allegedly is the 6th most segregated city in the country for a medium to large city. I don't know where those stats come from. I mean, it's but it's definitely a typical American city in terms of the racism that you just see everywhere. So we get folks who are kind of all over the spectrum, and we have these conversations, and we do a lot of listening. It's a lot of just. So, what are your personal experiences that brought you to that place? That kind of thing. So it's to me, it's the multiple approaches that is going to get us there in the long run.
There's been a couple different conversations in the radio here in Boston recently with a young Muslim couple who've set up tables sort of around Greater Boston. They say, ask a Muslim, and people talking to them about. They've actually come and actually spoken at a few different Unitarian Universalist or United Church of Christ congregations about what that process has been like. And sometimes people are angry, but often it's just a chance that people didn't have a they don't know who to ask. They don't know how to talk to folks about what's going on, and being able to provide a opportunity for folks like you're talking about, Bob, of like let's talk about race is you're breaking that wall that's there that we like to pretend isn't there around race and segregation and those sort of things too.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Great. Hey, I'm delighted to say that Cathy Rion Starr has rejoined us. And Cathy, I know that you're going to be leaving early to facilitate a call. Do you want to start by telling us about that call, and then will you tell us about what you've been doing in Hartford also?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so fun to be on The VUU. It's my first time, and I listened to The VUU.
No, she's frozen for listeners. Okay, we have to chant. Come back. I believe. She's at her church, we can see, but let's see.
Yikes.
Cathy was going to talk about my hair, how much she likes my hair. And she's going to talk about yeah, it is. I'm rocking the hair thing tonight.
Yeah, she's back.
Oh, great.
Okay.
They are back. Sorry to misgender you. Okay, please.
That's good. So let's hope this works. Our internet's a little bit challenging at the office.
Did you try turning your bandwidth down a little bit?
Yeah. It's just our internet connection is not the best.
We want to.
So we realize in SURJ, so with SURJ nationally, that there's a ton of people of faith who are getting involved. After the Charleston shootings, SURJ hosted a conference call that had like 800 people on it 3 days later. And we've had thousands of people of faith sign petitions. And so that's that on the one hand, and then on the other hand, we've got this rise in hate rhetoric across the presidential campaign. And hate rhetoric and a lack of embracing of racial justice on the Democratic side. So kind of putting those two things together, I'm coordinating and planning for SURJ a national weekend of action for faith communities called Love is Unstoppable, Another World is Possible, which is one of the chants from the streets, to really encourage people of faith, and specifically communities of faith, to move from some of the reflection and preaching and thinking and reading and educating that's so important into public action. So we're calling for folks to take love into the streets. And that might look like simply walking outside after worship or services and with signs about love and standing in the street. It might look like doing a love-in on Main Street in your town. It might look like sending love letters to the Republican National Party and the Democratic National Party or State Party and the Green Party and the local elected officials, saying like, here are the values that we want you to uphold. We can do this in a bipartisan, nonpartisan way that's about lifting up the values of Unitarian Universalism or the values of all sorts of faith communities, to say we need more of this in our presidential politics, because love is what we're about, and love is unstoppable if we organize, right? So May 14th and 15th is the weekend after Mother's Day, and so we're hoping that folks can kind of take that, the love that in healthy places is imbued in motherhood, and say one of the ways that we can embody Mother's Day is by the next weekend taking public action. So at noon, we're doing a conference call to learn more about the actions and the tools that we're developing and figure out we really want to support folks who maybe haven't taken action before or who are ready to kind of take the next step and stretch themselves into something that's a little bit less comfortable. And really say, let's experiment with this. Let's try to get ourselves a little bit out of our comfort zone and in a supported way and keep building this movement.
That's totally cool.
That's noon today, by the way, folks. That's in 20 minutes, just so people know. And I put the link in our YouTube chat if folks are looking for that.
And if you can't make it, then there's more info.
Will you say that chant again? Love is unstoppable.
Love is unstoppable. Another world is possible.
Possible. Nice. Very nice. So that's really soon, in a couple weeks. Good to know.
Yeah. There's this tension in this work right now. We're in a political moment where this is the moment, and we all need to do our part to keep it going. And at the same time, my mentor Lindy Ramson says churches are on the 2,000-year time frame. So in our world, it's like, oh my gosh, that's soon. But in the world of folks who are dying on the streets at the hands of police or dying for lack of health care, the moment is yesterday. And so how do we hold that tension and push ourselves?
That's very cool. So tell us about the work in Hartford that you're doing.
Yeah, we started our SURJ chapter in September and have done a bunch of things. We've got over 100 Black Lives Matter lawn signs up around our community, and probably half of those are folks from my congregation, the Unitarian Society of Hartford, because I preached about it and put an ask out there. And those signs have gotten stolen and defaced and all sorts of things, and that's an opportunity for conversation. We have shown up with Moral Monday Connecticut, which is led by Bishop John Selders, who I know many in our UU community know. It's Black-led organizing. Bishop Selders is from St. Louis, and so has a deep connection to Ferguson. And they asked us to hold it if we at the Unitarian Society of Hartford could host an action right outside our congregation. Is the intersection between Hartford and the suburbs, and it's a commuting route. And folks will drive through the poor Black North End without stopping and take their tax dollars and everything else out to the suburbs. So Moral Monday Connecticut, with SURJ folks showing up, with folks from our congregation showing up, blocked that intersection to say, hey, we need to keep wealth in the city of Hartford and challenge this split between the suburbs. And then we also had Trump come to Hartford last week with less than 48 hours notice, and had about a half a dozen SURJ folks go inside and do a chanting disruption, not as, we didn't have the kind of planning time that they had in Buffalo, so it was, I was proud that we were able to get inside and do something and disrupt, as well as had hundreds of folks outside protesting and saying, not in our state, no hate in our state.
So Cathy, here's a question coming through from Mark Gibbons, who's a viewer. Hey Mark, he says, so it's okay for us to disrupt the free speech of those we disagree with, then is it okay for anti-choice folks to block clinics? It was okay for those against integration to block schools in Montgomery. How would you answer, Mark?
I think that's something that comes up, and one of the Facebook feeds that I was following around this was saying that free speech is about the government not limiting our speech, the speech of people, and so that's one piece. Free speech is not about me preventing you from speaking so much, in terms of the Constitution. It's about the government allowing us to speak, and part of the ways we speak is through action. And direct action is an important tactic of movements. And so how do we both take those direct actions, like Erin was talking about? It's like twofold. It's partly taking the direct actions in order to shift things and in order to get people off the fence, and then it's also doing the deep canvas and the deep conversations and the base building organizing of having thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of conversations. And that's where we actually have communication. That's where we actually have real dialogue and change. That doesn't happen in the polarization, in a situation that's already polarized. There's already a shutting down of speech, and so taking direct action is a way of claiming that, a way of being a part of the conversation in that polarized way, but it doesn't displace the conversations that need to happen, that we all need to be having all the time with the person at the swimming pool when I'm exercising, or the parents at my kids' daycare, or any number of other things.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, let's pause and finish with Mark, because Cathy has to leave in 4 minutes. So I want to, or 2 minutes. I want to make sure before you go, Cathy, that you get a last word. Anything that you're especially excited about that you want to share with us before you have to take off and run that clergy call?
Sure. I hope to see some of you on that call at noon. I have never seen a movement like this in my life, and spent some time with SURJ folks earlier this week who are a generation older, and they haven't really either. I mean, this is a moment. The movement for Black lives, the strength of the immigration movement, and SURJ provides a vehicle for white folks to strategically and powerfully and accountably engage in that. And so it's just lifting my heart to no end and feeding my spirit in such a deep way. And I hope it is for you all who are listening and watching, or it can be. I don't have words for how powerful this is and how powerful it can continue to be in the healing of white people's souls too, because we are hurt by racism in a very, very different way than folks of color, and there is a brokenness to our spirits as white people that it is in my interest, it is in our interest to end white supremacy, because it's the right thing to do, and because it's part of what gives me hope for the world. Is let's keep organizing.
Amen. Well, thank you, and thanks for all of your work for justice, and including the call in 15 minutes. May that go well. And CLF's theme is Justice for May, and I didn't know about this. Love is Unstoppable. I'm taking notes for what we'll be doing. So thank you for that.
I'd be happy to support you in doing that more.
Hey, maybe you'd like to do a homily. A video homily. We'll talk to you.
We could talk. Sure.
Excellent.
Be careful what you volunteer for, Cathy.
No, we really want to support folks to take action. So anybody, be in touch. I'm happy to do that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I know you have to run.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I want to leave some time for Aisha to talk about revolutionary love. We've had Love is Unstoppable, and we have revolutionary love. And then we'll, Bob, I could see you also wanted to respond to Mark Gibbons, and I had some thoughts too. But let's start with revolutionary love, because why not?
Why not? So there was a conference this past weekend in New York City that actually Tom Schade and Lena Gardner attended, also from CLF. And so it was powerful. It was led by, it was actually coordinated by Jackie Lewis, led it, the minister, Reverend Jackie Lewis from Middle Collegiate Church, and the UUA also co-sponsored it. So there were maybe about 40% of the attendees were UUs. So it was at times heart-wrenching. Melissa Harris Perry spoke there, and probably the most raw moment for me of the conference, the whole conference, was there was one night where 4 women spoke, 2 white women, one an active NYPD and one a retired captain from NYPD who's now a Baptist minister, and 2 black women. The 4 of them had an opportunity to speak, TED Talk style, and then the 4 of them spoke to each other. And you could, it was so powerful because one of the black women's cousin was one of the Charleston 9 that was murdered by Dylan Roof. And the conversation was painful to watch and also important to be a part, to watch and see. And so, at one point the captain, they're the minister folks at Black Lives, but they're not ready to hear us yet. And then the minister woman, and God help me, I can't remember their names, I apologize, but she said, we are ready. So it went back and forth in a way that was, and it was really respectful. Certainly it was, there was a lot of pain, and it was very respectful. The part that I kept getting frustrated at, frankly, is there was still an element of white fragility that there was. So at one point, a white UU minister said, okay, it's one thing to decenter whiteness, but we can't discount white voices. And it was a white man who happened to say this. And my whole body had such a reaction to that. And I was trying to process it. And I finally realized, as a social worker, when if you work with someone with PTSD, right, I don't, as the therapist, the person who's charged with helping heal that person cannot ask that person for anything. And after we saw images of lynchings, and the whole conference was powerful and real and authentic. And so what I want to, if I can go back and say to this person, hey, this country has perpetrated trauma after trauma and crime and violence on an entire group of people. And now there's a movement for Black Lives, and somehow there has to be some kind of, well, please don't discount white voices that are still in power. I don't know where to go with that, and it's usually the UUs who anyway. So there was, so I've been kind of trying to unpack, and then there was a Baptist minister, a woman from Texas, who said, I tell people that white people now have to know that they're going to be uncomfortable for the rest of our lives until we make this right. I've never heard a UU minister say that. And not to say, I know you feel that way, Meg, and I know some that are enlightened feel that way, but I thanked her. I said, thank you for saying that, because we also had some folks say, well, I'm not comfortable with kill the police. I'm okay with F the police, but not kill the police. And finally, Lena Gardner had to say, I sat with Jamar Clark's mother. So that anger is real, and I've not, Black Lives Matter protesters have not killed the police, and I'm thinking, oh my God, the fact that you even have to say this is mind-boggling. But it was an authentic conference. It was raw sometimes, and I didn't come away with as much tactics as I maybe would have liked. However, it was a really authentic, I felt, conference, and some real discussion about race.
That's great. Yeah, I went to that some years ago. I haven't been for a while, but this one looked especially powerful in that it seemed to be bringing activism much more in the center. The one that I was at was really about worship and, much more about church in the building than church in the streets. Yeah.
No, it was very activist centered. Chris Crass was there. His partner Yardena and Mickey Scape Jones, who was an excellent speaker. She's from Tennessee. I mean, there were people I hadn't yet heard of, and it was super emotional. I could have stayed 3 more days. I mean, I was really super engaged, and the worship was just, oh my God. I mean, it was amazing. So
they know how to worship there, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, that. Go ahead.
You know, and it's a large church in New York City led by a black female minister, which is excellent, and supported by, you know, the Middle Collegiate Network. So that was also inspiring.
Yeah, she came out and did the program with the senior ministers of large churches. She's certainly been around a lot of UUs for a lot of years. I think Taquina Boston met up with her some years ago, and I was thinking of writing Taquina. I haven't yet, just to say, you must feel so great about having made this connection, you know, because it's been such a good one for Unitarian Universalism. I was thinking about that white need to, like, grade everything, you know, kind of, and we didn't have a chance to talk to Erin about this, but some of the behaviors that white people do can make organizing white people excruciatingly painful. Now, as somebody coming from UUism, I'm really familiar with a lot of these behaviors, but, you know, the kind of one-upmanship and the competition and which I'm not saying only white people do it, but it's just so, like, the need for control is just so bone-wearying and so embedded in our very cells as white people. So it's one of the things we do at my SURJ meeting is sometimes check out by saying, like, what's the whitest thing I did this week, or how did my whiteness show up in this meeting, even if I didn't verbalize it, like what was coming, just so that we can start to recognize, like, that need to say, well, it's okay if they say this, but I'm not comfortable with that. Well, who really asked you? Like, is the media interviewing you about this? Like, and if they were, why would it matter what you thought? You know, and it's just that huge need, which I think ministers feel when people come through the line and kind of grade our sermons, you know, like, like, wow, I didn't feel guilty when you said that, and I thought I would, or, you know, whatever. It's just whiteness. Oh, God. And yes, lack of humility is profound. You're saying, Aisha, as you use, but also, I mean, Alma Crawford had a Facebook post the other day that said whiteness is acclimating to funhouse mirrors and then saying that everybody else's vision is askew. And I just feel like, for me, this work is just one day after another thinking I've got it and then going, oh my God, I didn't have it again. Look at another funhouse mirror. And it's just so. Aisha, you had been, did you also go to Finding Our Way Home?
No, this year
that's
because
right.
they were so close together.
College
I've gone
prep.
to many others. Yeah.
So I'm really curious, because what percentage of the people at the Revolutionary Love Conference were white and what were people of color?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think it was quite 50-50, but it was a lot more genuinely diverse than I've seen in UU circles. I have to repeat something a UU of color said to me that was so, okay, so we were talking about General Assembly, and I was talking about how Black Lives of UU will have a track this year, and she said, you know, I live in Oakland, and the idea that I'm going to leave a diverse city to go to a really white space like General Assembly is something I'm not going to do anymore. And when she said that, I'm like, oh my God, you are absolutely right. I mean, folks of color, you know, many folks of color live in diverse, obviously, you know, live in diverse places, and they're going to leave those diverse cities to go to super white places. And it was anyway, but it was a lot more, I mean, easily, I don't even, 40, I don't think it was quite 50, but maybe, yeah, it was a lot more multicultural than any UU space I've ever been in.
And was there something like caucusing there, or were you all together all the time?
We were together all the time. We did go into small groups, but not based on people of color. We didn't caucus in that way, which was interesting, because I don't think, well, I don't have any evidence to this, but because I brought up the white fragility question to Jim Wallace. Oh, Jim Wallace was also there, Jim Wallace and Jackie. And there was even discomfort not discomfort. I didn't get like a full, you know, it was more like, well, we don't want to offend people kind of thing. But so I think UUs are more comfortable with caucusing, which is a good thing. But it's interesting you say that. No, there wasn't caucusing in that way.
That's very. I'm glad you were there. I kind of wished I was. I followed it closely.
Did you watch it live stream?
I did not. I just watched on Twitter.
Yeah. No, it was real. It was for me, it felt very real.
Because you had the guy from Kimmy Schmidt come and pray, right?
Yes. And I didn't know that till after, because I don't watch that show. And then suddenly it was like, oh yeah, from Kimmy Schmidt. I'm like, oh my God, who's that guy? Yeah, it was really good.
They have an amazing congregation that way. They have people from Broadway in their choir, and So.
Oh yeah, it was an amazing. Somebody turned to me during the worship and said, "Is your choir like this?" I'm like, not in a million. We have a great choir, but
yeah, not like this.
Not like this.
Wow. Oh, well, I'm glad you were there. So we have just a couple more minutes. Bob, was there something you wanted to say specifically a few minutes ago?
Well, talking about the freedom of speech thing quickly, and full disclosure, Mark Gibbons sat on my internship committee, and he's a good friend of mine. So, I say this with nothing but love. But first of all, at the Trump rally, I can assure you that no Trump supporter had their freedom of speech limited by the 20 of us yelling in that crowd of 11,400, and Trump talked right over us most of the time. So, which points to really the dynamics of power behind this thing. We make a real fetish out of freedom of speech, but we don't acknowledge the imbalance of power. That when a racist billionaire real estate developer finances a presidential campaign based on bullying people of color, then he's got the freedom of speech that comes with $1 billion. Whereas,
Amen.
Yeah. And the other thing is, we in this country we make a fetish of freedom of speech, and I think freedom from the get-go, from the very signing of the Declaration of Independence, has been a sliding scale. So the slave owners who wrote the Constitution had lots of freedom for white men, landed white men, and less freedom for women who couldn't vote, and zero freedom for people who were property, who have experienced complete domination. So, and I think we ought to reframe how we think about freedom in general in this country, and maybe think less about freedom and more about our obligations to each other. And because really, it is our interdependence that is the reality. You're not born free. When you're born, you see a brand new baby, you're utterly dependent. You're utterly dependent, and that's how it is in your whole life, And no one ever gets completely free, and nor should they be, So, it's just time to. It's time to push back on freedom. Sorry, rant is over.
Thank you. No, it's a good rant. I think we all enjoyed it. I wanted to say that I think blocking women from getting abortions and blocking children from going to school is actually blocking people from something that they need, whereas lifting up another voice when somebody is speaking is offering another voice. The intention of the people outside the schools in Montgomery wasn't to share their views. It was to stop. It was to stop a change in policy. So I think I differentiate. I think it's a complicated conversation in some ways, and I, as a religious person, I don't go stand behind somebody I disagree with and hold up signs and point to them and say that's stupid or something like that. I think I take seriously, But yeah, lifting up another voice in a huge stadium so that people watching it get a sense like not everyone agrees with this. In fact, some people are so upset that they risk themselves is speaking to the media. Anyway, well, here's a closing thing. Aisha, why don't you say that closing word? You keep typing these amazing things. Share them with the people.
Talk more.
One of the points that came out during the conference in one of our small groups was white people's discomfort with anger of people of color. And so it came out that anger is part of white privilege. White people can be angry, they can protest, but as soon as there's a coalition, concerted effort among people of color that are angry, suddenly it's a problem. And so anger can no longer continue to just be for white people as part of white privilege.
Great. Amen. With those closing words, we conclude another week of The View. Anger is not a privilege only for white people. and only for men. Let's say that too. So lovely to be with you all and with our guests today. Next week we have Reverend Susan Moore, who is at All Souls DC, serving there as a UCC pastor, and we're curious to hear about her experience there. Can't wait to see you all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.